You know, there's a couple of figures who are at the mythological roots of our culture, and you know, people get upset with me because I bring in religious themes, but I understand some things about mythology and religion. And it's not an accident that the axiomatic Western individual is someone who was unfairly nailed to a cross and tortured. It's like, yes, right, exactly. So what do you do about that? Well, I thought about that for a long time too. It's like, well, you don't get together in a damn mob, because all that does is allow you to be as horrible as you could possibly imagine and suffer from none of the consequences. That's a bad idea. So how about we don't do that? Well, there's a deep idea in the West too. It's like, pick up your damn suffering and bear it and try to be a good person so you don't make it worse. Well, that's a truth, you know. I read a lot about the terrible things that people have done to each other. You just cannot even imagine it. It's so awful. So you don't want to be someone like that. Now, do you have a reason to be? Yes. You have lots of reasons to be. God, there's reasons to be resentful about your existence. Everyone you know is going to die. You know, you too. And there's going to be a fair bit of pain along the way, and lots of it's going to be unfair. It's like, yeah, no wonder you're resentful. It's like, act it out and see what happens. You make everything you're complaining about infinitely worse. There's this idea that hell is a bottomless pit, and that's because no matter how bad it is, some stupid son of a bitch like you could figure out a way to make it a lot worse. So you think, well, what do you do about that? Well, you accept it. That's what life is like. It's suffering. That's what the religious people have always said. Life is suffering. Yes. Well, who wants to admit that? Well, just think about it. Well, so what do you do in the face of that suffering? Try to reduce it. Start with yourself. What good are you? Get yourself together for Christ's sake, so that when your father dies, you're not whining away in a corner, and you can help plan the funeral. And you can stand up solidly so that people can rely on you. That's better. Don't be a damn victim. Of course you're a victim. Jesus, obviously. Put yourself together. And then maybe if you put yourself together, you know how to do that. You know what's wrong with you, if you'll admit it. You know there's a few things you could like polish up a little bit, that you might even be able to manage in your insufficient present condition. And so you might shine yourself up a little bit, and then your eyes will be a little more open, and then you can shine yourself up a little bit more, and then maybe you could bring your family together instead of having them be the hateful, spiteful, neurotic, infighting batch that you're like doomed to spend Christmas with. So then you fix yourself up a little bit, kind of humbly, because, you know, God, you're a fixer-upper if there ever was one. And then you got to figure out, well, can you figure out how to make peace with your idiot brother? And probably not, because he's just as dumb as you, so how the hell are you going to manage that? And so then maybe you get somewhere that way, and your family's sort of functioning, and you find out, well, that kind of relieved a little bit of suffering, although it reduced the opportunities for spiteful revenge, and that's kind of a pain in the neck. And so then you get your family together a little bit, and you're a little clued in then, at least a bit, because you've done something difficult that's actually difficult. You're a little wiser, and so then maybe you could put a tentative finger out beyond the family and try to change some little thing without wrecking it. It's like, our society is complex, and we teach our students that they could just fix it. It's like, go fix a military helicopter and see how far you get with that. It's like, what are you going to do? You're like a chimp with a wrench. Whack! Oh, look, it's better. It's like, no, it's not better. Things are complicated, and to fix things is really hard. And you have to be like a golden tool to fix things, and you're not. So, and that's the other message of the West. It's like, how do you overcome the suffering of life? And I'm not saying it's only the message of the West. How do you overcome the suffering of life? Is be a better person. That's how you do it. Well, that's hard. It takes responsibility. And I think, you know, if you said to someone, you want to have a meaningful life? Everything you do matters. That's the definition of a meaningful life. But everything you do matters. You're going to have to carry that with you. Or do you want to just forget about the whole meaning thing and Then you don't have any responsibility, because who the hell cares? And you can wander through life doing whatever you want, gratifying impulsive desires for how useful that's going to be. And you're stuck in meaninglessness, but you don't have any responsibility. Which one do you want? Ask yourself, which one are you pursuing? And you'll find very rapidly that it isn't the majority of your soul that's pursuing the whole meaning thing, because, well, look what you have to do that. You have to take on the fact that life is suffering. You have to put yourself together in the face of that. Well, that's hard. Christ, it's amazing people can even do it. I'm stunned every day when I go outside and it isn't a riot with everything burning. Because really, God, you talk to people, it's like, I knew this guy, he'd been in a motorcycle accident and it really ruined him, and he was like a linesman, you know, working on the power, and he was working with someone who had Parkinson's disease, and they had complementary inadequacies, and so two of them could do the job of one person, and so they're out there fixing power lines in the freezing cold, despite the fact that one was 3/4 wrecked with a motorcycle accident and the other one had Parkinson's. It's like, that's how our civilization works. It's like, there's all these ruined people out there, they've got problems like you can't believe. Off they go to work and do things they don't even like, and look, the lights are on. My God, it's unbelievable. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. And we're so ungrateful. College students, the postmodern types, they're so ungrateful. You know, they don't know that they're surrounded by just a bloody miracle. It's a miracle that all this stuff works, that all you crazy chimpanzees that don't know each other can sit in the same room for 2 hours sweltering away without tearing each other apart, because that's what chimps do. So, anyways, so what happened? Well, I made some videos and I got to the bottom of some things, at least as far as I can tell, so I told you what the bottom is, and then I got this idea about what you might do about it, which isn't my idea. It's not my idea. It's an old idea. It's far older than Christianity. It's old. It's the oldest story of mankind. Get yourself together. Transcend your suffering. See if you can be some kind of hero. Make the suffering in the world less. Well, that's the way forward, as far as I can tell, if there is any way forward. And that's what's under assault by the postmodernists. So look out, because they know exactly what they're doing, and they know exactly why they're doing it. And that's what it looks like to me. So, that's it.
One of the things that our research and other people's research has indicated is that conservatives are conservative and liberals liberal because of their temperaments. It's partly biological. So, for example, conservatives tend to be higher in conscientiousness, which is industriousness and orderliness, particularly orderliness, and lower in openness.
Does that sound like someone? About crucified him for not putting things away properly.
Well, and the orderliness seems to be the thing that's driving things on the conscientiousness side. And so what that means is that conservatives, roughly speaking, make better managers and administrators. Okay, now liberals are higher in openness, which is both interest in ideas and interest in aesthetics, and they're lower in conscientiousness. And one of the consequences of that is that they tend to make better entrepreneurs and artists. And so our society is basically set up, and this is something people really need to think about, is that...
But that's odd, because nearly all business owners tend to be more conservative.
Not the entrepreneurs. Go to Silicon Valley.
Well, come on, you're talking about a limited amount of people, and Steve Jobs beats the shit out of his kids.
Well, I do consulting work for this company called the Founder Institute, and we've tested 40,000 would-be entrepreneurs from all over the world, 165 different cities. It's the biggest early-stage tech incubator in the world now. The guy who runs it, Adeo Resi, has created 2,500 new businesses in 4 years doing this. And we know what predicts entrepreneurial ability. And so the liberals are really interested in how ideas relate to one another, and they like to jump from one thing to another. And it does make them more creative, but they're not very good at implementation. Whereas the conservatives are very good at implementation and at detail. And so roughly speaking, the conservatives need the liberals to start companies and to generate new ideas, even though a lot of those ideas are going to be bad.
Right.
Okay, but the liberals need the conservatives to run the damn companies. Now, you can be temperamentally conservative and temperamentally liberal, and those are valid viewpoints because there's a place for those viewpoints in the world. They can function as tools. But what you have to do is exactly what you just said. if you're a conservative, you need to listen to the liberals because they have
Right.
some things to tell you. And the liberals, and I think they're far worse at this at the moment, by the way, the liberals have to learn to listen to the conservatives because the conservatives hold things together and stabilize things.
Right.
Yeah, well, so the dialogue. Now, the reason free speech is so important is because liberals and conservatives have to communicate in order to keep society going. And it's communication that's central to free speech. You have to be able to talk to each other, or you separate into armed camps and you either one becomes the other's slave, one becomes a tyrant,
Right.
or there's conflict.
Well, and that's what worries me too in the era of Trump, and I'm thrilled to see leftists losing their minds. I'd lie if I said that weren't the case. But you know, I
That's
also
because
think
you're a bad person.
It is because I'm a horrible
that's
person.
why.
And you know, we always when the election night came around, we kind of voted state Republican ticket and held our nose. I think everyone at Louder with Crowder did, with a few exceptions. But it is. I still want to be able to criticize him without people going absolutely ballistic. And I see that for the first time being bred on the right, so to speak. I don't think these people are conservative, but on the left it was well known that they couldn't handle criticism. You had to follow lockstep. It was a very narrow tent. The Republican Party was a very wide tent. And now in the era of Trump, people get so personal and vindictive if you just say, you know what, I don't support a 35% tariff on companies having to outsource jobs to remain afloat, and they get furious. So I don't know if you've noticed that in Canada, but certainly in the States for the first time, that sort of dogmatic, anti-critical speak of their preferred leader.
Yeah, well, that's part of the polarization process. I mean, this was the whole purpose of education at one point, is to,
Yes,
was to
once upon a
expose
time.
you. It was expose you to views that contradicted your own, and to help you find value in those alternative views.
Yeah.
And the reason for that was to help you get out of your confirmation bias and the tendency of that to augur you into a narrow viewpoint that is no longer representative of the world.
Right.
It's really a bad thing when that happens. It's like you're a celebrity that's completely surrounded by sycophants who only tell you what you want to hear.
Exactly.
What happens is that because you're not getting any corrective information anymore, your weaknesses don't get corrected and they start to take you over.
Right.
That's exactly what's happening in our polarized political landscape. It's like the weaknesses of the radical left viewpoint are starting to predominate, to dominate the entire spectrum on the left side of the...
Yeah, I think it's already dominated the left for a long time, and now unfortunately I see it permeating the right a little bit, where they're willing to cannibalize themselves just because you're critical of one action of Trump. And that really worries me in the United States.
Yeah, well, the thing about criticism is, for a political leader, is that criticism can be a really good thing, because if you're a good critic, you don't only say why the person is wrong, you offer some alternatives that might be better, and you
Right.
force them to sharpen their arguments. And people think of criticism as insult, something like that. And that criticism is, here's a way that you could have done that better.
Right.
And you want that. You want criticism from other people. It's a consequence of polarization.
Yeah.
Right? Because when things polarize, then viewpoints become increasingly black and white, and they become increasingly simple. And the problem with that, I think it was Einstein who said that an explanation should be as simple as possible, but no simpler. And political beliefs should be like that too. They should be simple as possible, but no simpler. And the thing about political beliefs is they're not beliefs about statements of fact about the world. They're beliefs about how to move forward and
Right.
to solve problems. And the real test of a political belief is, can it specify a problem? And then, can it solve the problem? And the way that we practice those political beliefs and their formulation is through dialogue and critical dialogue.
Okay, let's try this again. All right. So there's a reason I'm defending freedom of speech. The reason for that is quite straightforward. The reason I'm defending freedom of speech, because that's how people with different opinions settle their opinions in a civil society. Free speech is the mechanism by which we keep our society functioning. It's as a consequence of free speech and the ability to speak that people can put their finger on problems, articulate what those problems are, solve them, and come to a consensus. And we risk losing that. Now, you can say there should be reasonable restrictions on free speech, and that's the case. You shouldn't be allowed to yell fire in a crowded theater. And reasonable people can discuss and debate what those restrictions should be. But we can't debate the fact that putting restrictions on free speech is something dangerous beyond repression. And that's what we're faced with. Now, we've had laws passed in this country that regulate what people can say. What people can't say. And that's reasonable. But it seems to me that we're in danger of crossing a line. I don't speak perfectly, and my arguments aren't perfectly formulated. Neither are anyone else's. And we have to be able to say what we have to say badly, or we won't be able to think at all. And I know where that leads. I've studied totalitarianism for 4 decades, and I know how it starts.